and welcome to the space that gives you inspiration on work, on life, and how to balance both worlds. We continue our series on self-discovery, and in this video, I would like us to talk about self-esteem. When you've come from a place of self-identity and know who you are, and then you come to a place of self-consciousness where you've thought through your self-image and you've thought through your self-awareness, or you're now going through self-awareness, the next step that you want to go through, or really the result, is therefore self-esteem. Now, self-esteem, many times people think of it as a negative thing, but self-esteem as a concept is a concept of its own. It's what is your, how do you feel about what you found out in the previous videos? How do you feel about your self-identity and who you are? How do you feel about it will give you a certain self-esteem. How do you feel about your self-image? Now that you know that, or now that you've discovered in your mind that you have a self-image that you are fat, right? How do you feel about that? Now that you've gone behind it and feel that you're the right size, how does that make you feel? So for one person, it might make them feel, if they're fat, for some people it will make them feel happy and empowered. And for a person who's a normal size, they might also feel happy and empowered. A person who is thin, they might feel happy and empowered. Yeah, because we are different, right? So the question now you're asking yourself is, how do I feel about all of the things that I've found out? So how do I feel about my self-identity? How do I feel about my self-image? When I say, how do I feel about my self-identity? How do you feel about being a woman, for example? I remember when I was going through my self-discovery journey, I realized that, this is funny. When I was going through, when I did my self-identity, and then I asked myself, how do I feel about being a woman? Dears. I remember thinking, I don't know that I feel good about being a woman, because I felt that in so many instances I was deprived of opportunity. I was, just because of the fact that I was a woman. That was my true feeling of the fact that I was a woman. So that would then therefore determine what my self-esteem is. Do you see do you see where I'm coming from? I remember after working through myself and working on myself, I still feel a certain way when I want to pee and I go to a public toilet. I'm just like, man, I wish I was a guy. Like, I just need to pull it out, pee there and get out, But now I'm a chick, I have to pull down the pants, pull down the panty, then pee at a certain angle. But if I was a guy, I would just stand. Like, so there are certain instances, personally, when being a woman, I'm just like, I feel disadvantaged. So how do you feel about your self-identity? How do you feel about your self-image? How do you feel after doing your self-awareness? Like, how do you feel about you? How do you feel about when you did your self-awareness, about why you do the things you do, why you think the things you do, why you feel the things you feel? When you found out that information, how did that make you feel? How it makes you feel will either mean you have an inflated self-esteem, a low self-esteem, or a high self-esteem. So if you have an inflated self-esteem, you have a heightened sense of superiority over other people. You feel more important, more elevated, more privileged, luckier. You feel above everybody else. And I mean, it's not a place that we want to be in, but if you've been honest with yourself at the point, especially of self-awareness, you'll find out whether or not you have an inflated self-esteem, where you have this, in there, out here it might not look like it, but in there, like when you enter a room, you look around and you can quickly, every time you enter a room, you quickly gauge everybody and you kind of find yourself always at the top. Yeah, you probably have a heightened sense of superiority, or if anytime you're in a situation or you just feel like you would, like there's a challenge and you're like, I can get that real quick. If there's a test, I can get that. You probably have an inflated self-esteem. You have an inflated way you feel about yourself. If you enter a room and you look at everybody and you're just like, yeah, I'm probably the cutest guy in this room. As long as you are always coming on top, or every time you enter a room and you find that you feel like there's somebody on top, you start to pick at them, right? Like, yeah, so the mustache, why did he have to have a mustache? Like, couldn't he not? Just because you realize that there's somebody above you, immediately you start to pick on people to tear them apart. You probably have an inflated self-esteem. Then there's people with, after finding out how they feel about themselves and in the exercises that they've done in the previous videos, you realize that you have a low self-esteem. I don't know if any of you have realized that through the previous videos, I've not talked about people's opinions. But if through your time of self-awareness and looking at your self-image and looking at your self-identity, you are thinking about other people and what they viewed of you and what they perceived of you and what they thought of you, if at any one point you're asking yourself, but this one said this, but you probably will end up with a low self-esteem because you're deriving value from how other people value you. Does that make sense? So you find that for you, it's everything about other people. It's not about your intrinsic self and what you think about yourself. So that one is, you're usually looking at other people's approval. And then the third one and the final one, which is probably what we most of us want to have, is to have a high self-esteem. Not inflated, not low, but just high, you know, where it's, as opposed to thinking about what other people think of you or what you think of yourself being, you know, higher than everybody, you recognize your uniqueness. Yeah? When you recognize your uniqueness, you have a high self-esteem. You realize that when you enter a room, everybody is different. Nobody has to be above anybody. You recognize everybody for their uniqueness and recognize yourself for your there's no levels. As long as for you there's no levels, but there's a removal of oneself to celebrate your uniqueness, then you have a high self-esteem. So if you're looking to move from, you know, whether you have a low self-esteem or a high self-esteem, I mean an inflated self-esteem, and you want to work towards going to a high self-esteem, just work towards seeing everybody in a room and then activating or removing yourself and recognizing your own uniqueness, that we are different, that while we might all in this room earn the same amount of money, I'm probably unique from somebody else, my neighbor, because at the point of buying a car, the car I've truly wanted is a Benz, okay? Because I want class, because of my job, because then I have removed myself from my uniqueness for buying a Benz, while somebody else would prefer a Toyota. Why? Because it's easier to maintain, it's quicker to find parts. They have chosen. So that made you unique. It didn't make you better because you bought a Mercedes. No, it just made you different. As long as you start to see people as different, you've started to have a high self-esteem. So I don't know if you'd like to enter a small game with me, okay? We're going to test our self-esteem. Now, you're going to answer yes or no to these 6 questions. Are you ready? Are you ready? I hope you have your notebook and your pen. I'm going to ask you 6 questions. Question number 1. Do you believe you're superior to others in some way? Like, yeah, like in your mind you're like, the truth is, I'm quite pretty. I'm pretty. Yeah, you do think you're superior to others in that way. You know, as I'm more intelligent in general. I'm quite intelligent. As long as you feel there's a certain superiority that you have over others, I would like you to answer either yes or no. Question number 2. Do you believe that you're not worthless? Like you have worth? Do you believe that you're of worth? Do you believe you have a high worth? If that makes sense. That you're worthwhile, if you want to say, but you're not worthless. Like you know it for a fact. You're just like, do you know me? I have worth. And this is not in a bad way, but do you feel like you have worth? The third question is, are you insensitive to criticism? Like when people tell you about yourself, do you find that you are checking yourself out? Or could you care less? Like, so you said I did what? Please. That means you're insensitive to criticism. When they tell you that there's something that you've done, maybe wrong, do you feel like it doesn't move you? So what? So you said, please. So do you feel like you're insensitive to criticism? Question number 4, do you feel like you are an overall success? Like overall, you're successful. Like you have the, everything that you define as successful. Do you feel overall, not in everything, but in general, briefly, you're successful? Like when you think through what you know to be success, you have it, at least to a large extent. Please answer yes or no. Question number 5, do you think positively about yourself? Most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, do you think positively about yourself? You're not putting yourself down, you're not, answer yes or no. And question number 6, do you accept yourself even if you're rejected by others? Like you go into a room, they couldn't care less about you, but you're just like, please, that's me. Take me or leave me, that kind of feeling. Do you accept yourself even if others reject you? A dude has just, broken up with you. For some people, they'll try to change themselves, but you're like, no, I'm not changing nothing. You accept yourself. Now, if you had 1 to 2 yeses, you probably have a low self-esteem and you need to work towards having a high self-esteem. If you had 3 to 4 yeses, then you have a high self-esteem. So that's kind of where we want to be. And if you have 5 to 6 yeses, you probably have an inflated self-esteem, and we need to work to get you a bit more humble, if that makes sense. So until next time, I can't wait to see you. Bye-bye.